The What to Next podcast helps you build a TBR of future favorite books. In each episode, Lori and Maine interviews authors and book influencers to recommend books they loved for you to pick up today. If you're an avid reader, always looking for your next great read, then the show. Hi, Audrey. Hi, Emily. Welcome to What to Next podcast.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having us.
So happy to have you both. So, Audrey, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Emily will tell us a little bit about herself.
My name is Audrey. I live in New Jersey, and I have 2 kids and a husband, and I'm a writer, and we are TV producers as well. And I don't know. That's me.
And I'm Emily Harding. Yeah, Audrey and I met in New York working at a production company a few years ago. It was more than a few, but I'm telling myself it's only a few. And it kind of became instant friends. And so working in TV, adventures in dating, finally getting married, both of us, and navigating that. And then our friendship has just continued to grow. And then, during the pandemic, we thought, hey, let's write a book together. And that's where we are now.
Oh my gosh. So we got to talk about, so you met in the New York TV production scene, which is a little different from the LA scene. So what was that like to, work in TV and film, like TV, and then realizing like, hey, we're going to write this book together as a kind of like as a fun project,
Oh gosh. It was, well, they do not connect really. We realized, I think the TV that Audrey and I worked in was nonfiction. So we worked in a lot of Food Network for Audrey, and I worked on Discovery and history shows. So it was very much finding real world stories and pitching those to networks, and never really your story. You're always interpreting someone else's story. So that was kind of our life for a long time. And then, but I've always loved writing. And then, I've shared things with Audrey, and then she started sharing with me things that she had written. And during the pandemic, we both fell into this rut where I had just recently moved away from New York, and I missed my friends, and I missed working, and I was at home. We were both trying to homeschool our kids and trying to figure out what are we doing. So we thought, let's try writing a book. And it felt so far from what we did. It didn't feel like something that we were familiar with. We were navigating it from a place of complete naivete. But then as we did it, we realized it actually had a lot of crossover. You're essentially telling a story and how that unfolds and how you build the characters. And, Audrey, we both said we have such a thick skin from TV that I think working together and being like, that's not going to work. That's okay. No, you can't do that. It didn't, neither of us took offense because we were so used to it.
It's true. That is exactly what happened.
How was the writing process? Like, did you trade ideas? Did you plot it out? Did you like one person wrote one voice and the other person wrote the other voice and whatnot?
Well, it was interesting how it all came together because we did have this background in television. So we knew how to tell a story. We knew how to work together. We knew how to come up with episode breakdowns for a series. So we kind of had in the back of our minds, how are we going to do this? But then again, we do know how to work together really well. So for us, it was a little bit of trial and error, but we figured it out kind of quickly. And we had an episode breakdown or chapter breakdown. Sometimes I still use the TV terminology. So we had chapter breakdowns, and then we started to just divvy up the chapters, and I would send Emily a chapter. Emily would send me a chapter. You'd sort of wake up one morning, and this is during the pandemic, so you're so excited to get something in your inbox that you could work on, and it sort of just all kind of came together really naturally and organically, and then I would go into her chapters and she would go into my chapters, and we'd add little things and we'd write notes in the column, and it would end up being just us. It was like we were texting each other in our Google Docs. So it sort of all came together. And at the end of it, we're like, this came together like a TV show would, but it's ours. And we were surprised at how well it turned out. It took a while, but 2.5 years later, this is where we are.
Well, it was like actually like I started reading and then I ended up getting the audiobook and listening to it. And it felt like it's like a movie. Like I'm watching a movie of Emma's life unraveling in this like, fun place. And it's like this reimagining of, New York and trying to figure out who you are and falling in love, but not falling in love, not sure what you're supposed to do, and your family telling you what you're supposed to do. It felt very like not atmospheric, but it just felt very like I can watch this as a movie. There are books that can just be read, but this one's like a really like fun escape.
Yeah, I feel like with our backgrounds, sorry, you go.
We come from a visual storytelling, so
exactly.
That's kind of how it. I think at a couple times when I was doing, and when we were writing it, I don't think either of us thought we'd be here. I think it was more of a thing we were doing for each other. So I wasn't so conscious that we were writing in a visual kind of tone. But then as we got it got an agent and we were saying we were getting published, I was like, is it too much visual? But then you realize, no, that's how we tell stories. So that's how it kind of came across. And it's, and we love New York so much that it, I hope it worked, that it did it justice.
It did. It did justice. It did justice. So let's chat about Emma of 83rd Street. What is the story all about? Like, what is the elevator pitch?
Oh, the elevator pitch. I mean, it's such, again, being in TV, coming up with the elevator pitch sometimes is difficult, but this one was easy. It was essentially, what would you do? What would happen if Emma Woodhouse was transported into New York City, present day New York City? What would that look like? And it was so much fun because we really tried to stay as true to the original novel as possible, as far as the actual characters, what they would do, what they would look like. If this life existed in the Upper East Side, what would that be? Surprisingly, it wasn't as difficult as we thought it was going to be, but it was good.
We could draw from a lot of our own experiences with our dating lives. And because we both have, I lived there for almost 20 years and Emily for almost as long, I think. And so we know the areas. We wanted to take areas that, sections of the West Village that we lived in, or places that we had been to, and incorporate that into the book and make it really relatable and really fun, and take experiences that we had and put it into the book while trying to stay true to the original novel and keep those characters how they were, but bring them to life in modern day Manhattan. Yeah. So I hope we did that.
I think you did a really good job of telling. Emma is actually my favorite Jane Austen novel. Like, I know Pride and Prejudice gets a lot of love, but like there's something to be said about Emma and like her character. And I think in some ways it's because I came of age watching Clueless, and so like that was like my first experience to Emma, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. So this is like feels like this fresh take on the story, the original story, in a setting that it's familiar or it's aspirational for some. It's like a sense of like, I want to live in New York, and like what would New York look like, in that setting. So
yeah, we both
I think go ahead, Audrey.
I was going to say that we both love Clueless. I've seen that movie a million times, so it's definitely one of my absolute favorite movies. And so that you can't help but have that influence you when you're doing a retelling of Jane Austen's Emma.
Yeah,
that's so true. I think we made a conscious effort that I think we both, Audrey and I both. Formative years were when we had, Gwyneth Paltrow and Alicia Silverstone, and we had Emma Thompson. We had all these Jane Austen retellings that were kind of, in the ether. And so it was hard to escape Jane Austen. But I think the one thing with Emma is that she's always portrayed especially Clueless, as very young and very naive. And you read the book and she's in her 20s. She's very intelligent. She's not an airhead. She's sheltered and she's spoiled. But so I think we were very conscious of like what worked in these, but if we're actually staying true to the text, what do we have to kind of self-correct? And so that was also, it was wonderful using those and finding an excuse to have to watch Clueless a bunch of times, but also seeing what we wanted to go back to the original source for more than other films and other adaptations have.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So let's talk some recommendations. What kind of books do you tend to read, and what books we recommend our listeners to pick up?
Well, I'll go if you want. I tend to read fantasy novels and romance novels. So that's kind of where I kind of lead. And should I just tell you ideas of books that I like? So right now, well, I'm rereading The House in the Cerulean Sea. And actually, I'm rereading it with my 10-year-old son. And so I just love that book. It's by TJ Klune, and it's just this whimsical, funny, sweet, loving book it's YA fantasy, but I think everybody would just love this book. And it's sort of about this ordinary kind of lonely caseworker, and he is in charge of going to different orphanages and that take care of magical beings. So these kids who have magical powers, and he has to decide whether he keeps them open or if they should close. But he just loves the kids, but he can't get too attached until he gets to this one orphanage, and they have all these amazing kids that are magical. One's the Antichrist. Like, it's just a crazy, wonderful, sweet story with a lot of big themes about prejudice and stereotypes. But at the end of the day, it's about unconditional love. And I just love it. And my son is loving it too.
Oh,
that's my first recommendation. Yeah. I don't know how many we're doing, but with that one, I love. That's my big one. Can I do another one, or is Emily go?
I can go. I've got, I always feel like on the spot, and I know. It's like I'm also reading. I feel like now I have to read even more because of what we're doing. But I just reread something that I thought I reread Fault Lines by Emily Itami, which was just an incredible book, and it's kind of a romance, but not a very interesting look of domestic life in Japan right now, in Tokyo, and her navigating it as a wife and a mom. And I just thought I read it during the pandemic, and then I revisited it just a couple of weeks ago, and it stuck with me. It's just one of those books that you keep coming back to in your head and you're mulling over. And then what my all-time favorite last couple of years, and I think it's because it was the first one I read with my daughter, who's 11, and it was we read as equals. She's like, let's read this together. Now, you're not going to read it to me. We're going to read it together. I was like, okay. Was Snapdragon by Kat Leigh or Lee. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but it's a graphic novel, and it's just beautiful. I think we read it together, and she came in and she was sobbing and I was sobbing, and just a gorgeous book that really surprised me. And I recommend it to anyone who's looking to see graphic novels and who kind of sees them as not literature. I'm like, pick up Snapdragon. It's so good.
Oh my gosh, I'm picking that one up for sure.
Really good.
Awesome. Audrey, do you want to share another recommendation? And
sure. Let's see. I also the one that I keep picking up again, which is, again, I'm just into fantasy and romance put together, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And by V.E. Schwab. And I just love this book. I'm just obsessed with the main characters. And it's, Adeline, she's born in the 1700s. She's French. She hates her lot in life, and she makes a deal with the dark. And it's her. But the deal is that she is immortal, but the curse of it is that no one will remember her after they meet her. So she can't develop any long-lasting relationships, except with the dark, who sort of becomes this character that she names Luke. And it just, I don't know, it just got so into this book and their relationships. And the way they interact with other people, and also the passage of time and going through the ages, and they go through war, and then they get to modern times, and and they're living in New York. Well, she is. So anyway, I love that book, and I've read it already a couple times. So that's the one I keep going.
You told me to read that book.
I cannot stop talking about this book.
And I literally started it last week, and it was like 2 a.m. on Sunday night. And my husband, Tom, turns over. He's like, do you want to go to bed? And I'm like, leave me alone. And I was just curled up in this book.
I am so into this book. And I told my sister, I told my sister who's pregnant to read it, and because I secretly want her to name the baby, it's a girl, Addie or Adeline. And so I'm like, you need to read this book because she wants to figure out the name herself. And, and it's a secret what her name is. But anyway, she's in the middle of that book too. I'm like, I'm just telling everyone to read this book. It's so good. Really good. Yeah. It would be a great movie too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love this. Emily and Audrey, tell us where we can find you online.
Oh, good question.
Yes.
I should know our tags by heart, and I don't.
I know.
We are on Instagram,
mm-hmm.
And our tag is Audrey.and.Emily.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the best place to find us. We each have our own accounts, but really that's where we post everything, and that's where you know what's going on with each of us. Is Instagram, and then our website is the same, audreyandemily.com.
Love this. Very simple.
Yeah.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Emily, for being on the show.
Thank you for having us. It was so nice to meet you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, rate, and review the show. This is the easiest way to support the podcast. For a list of books mentioned and other book recommendations, please visit whattoreadnextblog.com. Thank you so much for listening, and happy reading.